People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny.
Washington is fundamentally corrupt. There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible.
And you are on.
Made in America, heard round the world. You're listening to Blunt Force Truth. I'm Chuck Woolery, along with my co-host today, Rusty Humphries. Mark Young is off powdering his nose somewhere. We have no idea what he's doing, but apparently it has priority over the show. So it's me and Rusty today.
That's right.
That'll make it work just fine. So the opening with me is this, Rusty.
Yeah.
China, China, China. Ever since Nixon opened up China to the Western world and to the United States, Washington has treated China as a customer and not the enemy. They are, in fact, an iron-fisted communist regime enemy of the United States. And I'll ask you this question. Did we ever have free and open trade with Russia or with the Soviet Union?
No.
Did we? No,
No.
Of course not. So why in the hell do we have free and open trade with the Soviet communist China?
Well, I mean, first of all, because they have more people than anybody else. I mean,
so that's what it comes down to. And,
Right.
Here's the deal with entrepreneurship and capitalism and everything else. The problem is you disregard what is right in front of your face, your enemy, and you start treating him as a customer who can do nothing wrong. And Trump has been on top of this for long before he became president, complaining about China doing this and China doing that, but never really defining China as the enemy, and he still doesn't today. But they are our enemy, and there's no question about it.
And you don't see any way of them becoming friends, and we can work together. And
No, these people, once they're Marxists, once they have power, I mean, Xi's made himself prime minister for life. So once they have power, they're not going to give it up. They will twist what you give them, put in front of them, into their ideology. They will not. And we always think, well, we open the world up to capitalism, open the world up to free trade. They'll come around and they'll see, just how great it is, and they'll become our way. It never happens that way. It is always the reverse.
what do you think we do about it? I mean, do you think Trump's doing the right thing in the way he's handling all of this?
I know people will go insane on Wall Street if I say this, but I don't care. Wall Street's really mostly, progressive Democrats anyway. I think we ought to just I think we ought to give Xi a call and just say, look, you know what? We've decided we're not going to do trade with you at all. So forget it. We're just cutting off all trade with China. See what happens with that. We don't get very much. I mean, the kind of stuff that we get from them is cheap clothes. I mean, how many shirts do you need in your closet, folks? How many pairs of pants? How many pairs of cheap shoes? I mean, the technology and all that kind of stuff. Well, you can get it done someplace else. They're not our biggest customer anyway. Everybody always thinks that they are, but they're not.
No.
So,
well, okay. So, but I mean, one of the problems is they own so much land here, our treasury bills. I mean, we're in debt to them a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, so what?
Say,
We're in debt
wipe
we're
the
in
debt
debt.
clean. Say, we're not paying you. Too bad.
No, it's not. I don't think you'd say that, but you just say we're not doing commerce with you anymore. We're done. If you don't see it our way, and if you don't want to do this in the right way, then we're not going to do any business with you at all. So there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's I'm sure it's far more complicated than I just made it out to be in a very simplistic approach. But my point being that they are an iron-fisted communist country, just like the Soviet Union was, and we didn't do business with the Soviet Union. And they're far more, I think, antagonistic on a daily basis than the Soviet Union ever was in some cases. But they're aligned. I mean, the Chinese government is the new Soviet Union. It's just in the East instead of the West. They've just changed locations, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And we're trying to make nice with them, and you can't do that. They're not going to do that.
And again, is it just greed? You think that we're trying to we keep giving China a break?
No. I mean, look, I think Bush actually got them into the World Trade Organization. And it's this whole thing of really believing that we can change the direction of a communist nation.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to change Cuba. You're not going to change China. When was the last one that we actually changed?
Could you say Russia?
Russia. Has Russia really changed? Think about it. Seriously? Has it?
I mean,
No.
no.
Russia has one thing. Russia has the economy of New Hampshire, probably. That's part of it. But Russia has one thing, and that's it. It's oil and gas. That's all they have, and they supply Europe. So, they got these landlines going into Europe with pipelines going into Europe, and they're going to control Europe. They can turn them off and on anytime they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right. Well, it's Blunt Force Show. My name's Rusty Humphries. By the way, I'm filling in for Mark just this one time. He'll be back next week, and then the show will be good. No, he's
the show will be good.
So, and you're not feeling good today. You okay?
You know what? I've got something started with me last week when I was doing the show. I told you I didn't feel very good. Mark said, "Well, you did okay," and I said, "Yeah, but I feel horrible. It is kicking my butt this week. It's bad. I probably didn't get 2 hours sleep last night.
It's been going around. I was out for a while, and even today, for me, weeks and weeks later, when I start talking, I start coughing. It's getting a little bit better. I don't know what the heck's going on.
Well, I took some cough medicine before I went on the air, so hopefully I won't cough my way through this. But
good thing I took some cough medicine. Woo!
Yeah, right. Yeah. I got out of the car and thought I was going to fall down when I got to the studio today, but I'll be all right. I'll get through it.
Did you ever read Atlas Shrugged or anything by Ayn Rand?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. I think I'm a big fan, and I studied her, and I read the matter of fact, I was even in Atlas Shrugged 3. Okay, so I'm not a guy that says I can't stand Ayn Rand. I like her. Actually, when I met, who was Alan Greensberg, the former Fed chairman. Right. He was Ayn Rand's one of her close allies for a long time. When I had a chance to meet him at a party at the vice president's house, the only thing we talked about was Ayn Rand. I'm starting to think Ayn Rand may have been wrong. And I never thought I'd say that, but I am sitting here, and what I'm talking about is her philosophy was greed is good. The bigger the company, the better, because as companies get bigger and bigger, good men will run these companies, and they will act honorably and ethically. And if they don't act honorably and ethically, then people will just leave, and they can move on to something else. We are seeing the rise of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse right now. Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon. None of those companies are acting honorably and ethically, and you can't just leave. And the Supreme Court ruled that iPhone users can sue Apple over App Store purchases today. And conservatives are angry, Chuck, because Justice Kavanaugh went with the liberals that basically said that the App Store is a monopoly, and they're right. Do you have an iPhone or do you have an Android?
I have an iPhone.
Okay. Can you buy an app from somebody else other than Apple?
No.
Can you look for a better price for an app?
Yeah, but this goes back to, this can also kill you. Because it goes back to, you remember the Beta, is it the Beta recorder? The
Betamax?
old tape recorder?
Uh-huh.
Betamax, right? They were made by Apple, right?
No, Sony. Weren't they Sony?
Was it? I don't know.
Sony Betamax.
Apple had one that was absolutely no good. It was smaller. It didn't work well like a VHS.
Okay.
And you could only, there were 2 different formats out there, and Apple owned one, which was, I don't know,
I think it was,
Apple
are you sure? I think it was Sony.
Well, one of the two, but they basically went out of business with it because they didn't service everyone.
Right.
It's like Microsoft versus Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft basically stole Apple's platform.
Right.
And rejiggered it and, turn it into, but applied it to everybody who had PCs. Apple is always exclusive Apple. It's exclusive for their devices, whatever the device is. I can't really talk, I'm not this good about stuff like this, but this is how I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
They are exclusive to their product, period.
Right.
They're not PC. They're not PC, that is, am I saying that right?
Yeah,
PC?
You're right. Yeah. They
personal computer.
Right. You can, with that, you can build anything you want. You can get, there's hundreds of companies that make all kinds of different pieces for it. And you can make a Frankenstein computer. It works fine.
And Apple is exclusive. And because of their innovation, they have been very successful. But I mean, once they stop the innovation and all that kind of stuff, they'll fall apart like anybody else because people want choice. And apparently there's enough choice on Apple to keep people there and enough, quality with their products. Like I say, I'm not a Rush Limbaugh when it comes to this because he's very, sad.
I'm not Rush Limbaugh either, but I'm an Apple expert. If you could see my studio right now, I have Chuck on one computer. I'm looking at you on another computer. I'm recording the audio for the podcast on this computer. I've got other audio over here on this computer, and I got another computer over there. They're all Apple.
Yeah.
Why? Well, I liked it because it worked. The problem now is that these big tech giants, and Apple I don't think is the biggest criminal here. I think Facebook is the biggest criminal right now. Just today in Italy, and tell me if you've heard about something like this in the past here, Chuck. In Italy, they've got a big election coming up in 2 weeks, and magically all of the anti-Brexit parties on Facebook gone. All of the conservative parties gone. All off Facebook 2 weeks before the election. Happened here in America a year ago.
Well, their answer is to shut down conservative talk whenever they can.
Correct.
And they have the ability to do that.
And the difference here is, and why this is so dangerous and why it's a monopoly, it's same thing with Apple, same thing with Amazon. The difference is, and we didn't have this in the past, when there's a new innovation, you were talking about, you can just go to a different company. They buy them. And so there isn't this competition. For example, there's been apps that were coming after Facebook, Instagram. So what they do? They bought them. WhatsApp, Facebook bought them. Heck, you can go on Amazon, and batteries were a big thing on Amazon. Now, the best deals on battery on Amazon batteries.
I can't see it. You're holding it up in front of something that's not even there. You put it in front of your face. Put it in front of your face.
That's what the audience is seeing. You see it there.
Oh, I see. They have one camera and I have another.
Yes, that's why you're seeing me to the side, Chuck. Yeah. But, Amazon batteries. It's getting to the point where, how much further can this go? Is it time to break these tech giants up? And I'm not a guy that likes that idea, but I'm starting to think maybe. Am I wrong?
Yes.
Okay, tell me why.
I think you are. Okay. I'll give you one perfect example.
Great.
Standard Oil.
Mm-hmm.
Standard Oil they tried to break they did break Standard Oil up in Congress. They went before Congress. They broke the whole company up.
Yeah.
It became Exxon and something else, about 5 different companies. And I remember, it wasn't Rockefeller. Was it Rockefeller?
Rockefeller, yeah.
No, he came out he said, "Thank you very much for breaking me up. You just made me far more richer than I ever hoped to ever be." Okay. Seriously. Because he broke up all these companies. They're still under the umbrella. He still got, all kinds of money from them. So I think that when you create a customer base, if they love your product, they'll stay with you. If they don't, they won't. And I understand that somebody's ox is going to get gored. In this case, it's our ox. It's the conservative ox that's getting gored, period. Because these people are all in bed with the government. Big business is always in bed with the government because that's where they get their power. Mm-hmm. Once they build up to a certain point, they got to get in bed with the government because then the government supports everything they do.
Right, but the difference today, though, is that, yes, they're getting, okay, let's use Facebook as an example. Or heck, Amazon's a great example, too. Yes, they're trying to get in bed with the government, but it's all the liberal side. I mean, Jeff Bezos didn't buy the Washington Post because he likes journalism. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's another great example. He didn't get the news he liked. What did he go do? He went and bought the biggest paper in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. It's a different era.
Oh, no, but how do you stop people from doing things like that? I mean, it's their – look, we're a free country. So,
are we anymore? I'll give you a good example. I was talking about Facebook shutting down those people in Italy, and maybe it's too close to me, Chuck. But a year and a half ago, I was doing this show on a number of different Facebook pages. We had 30 million likes with all of these different pages, and in one day, 28 million were gone. I had a 900,000 viewers every night. Went from 900,000 to 2,000 in one day.
Because they clipped your wings.
they unpublished the Facebook pages. They disappeared.
This happens on Twitter. It happens on all of the platforms. I mean, they hate us. They hate any kind of pushback. It's what the progressive liberal left always does.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're in charge, they will take advantage of, it's really funny. It's like, I don't think people understand. It's like a religion to them. They are invested in this religion. And once you are saved by the religion and the ideology of progressivism, then you're allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. You get away with it because it's in the name of progressivism.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how we fix this. I mean, you look at what's going on today with the Mueller report, with Barr, with Trump, with this new guy. What's his name? Jeff Dewhurst. Is that his name? The new investigator that Barr has put on.
I forget. Yeah, I think you're right, though.
I think it's Jeff Dewhurst. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this guy's going to get to the bottom of it, and nobody wants him to. Nobody wants Barr to get to the bottom of what went on before the election. Nobody wants Barr to get involved in what happened after the election. But
they don't, again, I don't believe they're going to get the Clintons. The Clintons, nobody gets away with more stuff in the history of our country than the Clinton family. Nobody. They're not going to do anything. This is just yap, yap, yap talk. Don't you think?
Well, maybe. I mean, it always has been in the past, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of people say it's just retribution. It's not retribution at all. It's justice. And you're talking about Jim Comey. You're talking about Lisa Stroke and Lisa Page and Brennan and Clapper and all of these people in very high positions in our government with the
FBI.
The DOJ, the FBI. I mean, you name it. I mean, it's pathetic what's going on. In other words, everything happened on the 7th floor,
right,
so to speak. Everything happened with all the officials who were above reproach and above everybody else. And so it's time to have a reckoning. There's no question about that. Now, whether it will happen or not, I think we've all become so cynical with Washington that we don't believe anybody's going to ever pay a price for bad acting.
Right. But they haven't. And James Comey.
Well, Nixon did.
Yeah. Okay.
Nixon did. So the left got their way with Nixon. So the right never gets their way. No. We just beat them in elections.
Right.
And then they fight back like crazy, like they've done, and they do it illegally and get away with it. They do it. I mean, look what's going on in Congress with these congressmen, Nadler and Schiff and all of these Swalwell. I mean, good Lord, it's just embarrassing what they're doing, but they're not embarrassed about it at all.
No, not at all. And we take a look at Comey. What Comey wanted to do was be the new Hoover, right? What did Hoover? We know what Hoover did.
Well,
he had these secret files on everybody, right? So my bet is that Comey had the same thing. I mean, take a look. When he didn't get his way with Trump, what did he do? He leaked it, top secret information. He was going to try to record him. He sent that information to a friend. It went to the media.
He did record him, apparently.
Okay, so that's right, and that's there's a big law against that, obviously, against the president.
Yeah.
So, and then the Democrats are going, "Oh, you shouldn't have fired him." Oh, but they're the first ones to say Hoover was terrible.
You know what? It's all just a political mess. It always has been. It always will be. Nothing will change there. And on top of that, if you do hold them responsible, they'll say it's retribution, and it's not justice, not really. It's just Republicans taking advantage, and it's just a mess. Washington is just a pit. It is truly the swamp, and maybe that's an understatement as to what Washington really is. And the average person out there, and I consider myself the average person, even though I'm involved in this every day. It's hard to even identify with the kind of people who are running our country, left and right. I mean, some of the people on the right are just as bad as the people on the left. Not as much, but they are. It's just weak need, and Trump comes along with a plan, an idea. He's forceful about it. People love him. And the establishment hates his guts. They despise him. Europe hates his guts. They despise him. They'd rather have Obama. But everybody'd rather have Obama because Obama got along with everybody.
He was cool. You know, it's funny. You were just saying something that reminded me. The second time we met, I know you won't remember. The first time we met was at the RNC convention in Tampa.
Okay.
The second time we met was at CPAC in Washington, D.C., and it was actually a week before Andrew Breitbart died.
Right.
Your thing then was Washington, D.C. is not fixable, and everything, and the system kind of needed to be blown up. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
You
I
still
do.
feel that way?
Yes. Well, of course, it's
It's
but
worse.
you know, it's all governments are like that though. Anytime people get power, you're talking about these big corporations and everything. People who have power like that are never responsible. They're never responsible. They're never people you can trust. I mean, the founding fathers wrote papers on this about, be careful who you give power to, and people who seek power, be careful of them. Don't trust people who are in power. And the reason you don't is because they always become people you cannot trust. They always become people who do not do the right thing. And then you get people who want to do the right thing. They become the outliers that everybody points at and says, what's wrong with them? Like the Ted Cruzes and people like that. I mean, they become the people on the outside looking in saying, we need to fix this stuff. And everybody's saying, what's wrong with you?
Right. And I think you just described my theory why Ayn Rand may have been wrong. Because in her books, you think about, her heroes, John Galt. Her hero in The Fountainhead, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but they were always these great men that got power, and they had honor and ethics, and you wanted to follow them because they were great men. And Mark Zuckerberg is not a great man.
No. He's not even a great boy.
Well, exactly. Jeff Bezos is not a great man. Schiff and these people that are getting power are not great men.
Don't you wonder how they're formed? I mean, we're formed in the womb to a certain extent, but how are these people formed? What forms them? What makes them go the way they go? Is it strictly just power and money, or just another way to make more? I mean, when you think about the average guy looks at it and says, if I had $1 billion, I mean, I'd just quit everything and go take a rest someplace and get on my boat and go fishing or whatever,
Right.
do all the things I've always wanted to do. Of course, you run out of those things after a while.
But I haven't gotten there yet.
But you wonder what drives these people for another billion and another billion and another billion. What is the driving force behind that? And they'll do anything to get it. They'll do anything to achieve it. And then it becomes, okay, how can I shape policy and how can I shape the way people think? Jeff Bezos is there. How do I shape the way people think? And
Mark Zuckerberg definitely is there.
Yeah, and I want them to think the way I think. And why do I think the way I think? Because how they think, I believe, is so far left and so far off, the course of our Constitution and the way our country is set up and our founding fathers. What do they have in mind? What do they want to change? What do they want? And I think that's the bigger question that nobody really understands. I don't understand what Mark Zuckerberg really wants, nor Jeff Bezos, what he wants.
I think I know what they want. Again,
what do you think they want?
My theory is conservatives tend to act with reason and logic. Liberals tend to act based on emotion. Okay? So if you're based in emotion, I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I want to make puppies and rainbows and make the world a great place. I want to have peace and love. And if we just got a little bit more money, and if I had just a little bit more power, I could get rid of homelessness and hunger. I could do all these great things. And we are the world, and we are the children. And did they know it's Christmas this time of year? And all these great things that sound great but never work. I think that's what it is.
And they never do it.
Well, they're trying. Sure, they do.
Look, I mean, come on. Look at San Francisco. Look at the streets of San Francisco. Look at the streets of L.A. Look at the streets of New York. Look at the streets of D.C. Look at
Seattle. I grew up in Seattle. It's a disaster right now.
And so Yahoo says it's the best place in the world to live.
Yeah, go visit.
And by the way, the top 10 of all the places are all liberal places.
Yeah,
they're not the best places.
I was there a couple years ago. I grew up in Seattle, and I was there a couple years ago, and we were driving down the street with my girlfriend. And she says, oh, look at the homeless shelter. There's a soup kitchen or something. There's this big, long line of homeless people. Oh, really sad. And then as we got closer, there was a big sign, world's first 24-hour marijuana dispensary.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you something. I have a theory about this whole lefty, homeless, this whole attitude of what's going on in our cities.
Okay.
I think they want it. I think they want people to believe we're living in the 30s and we're not living in the 2019s where the
Hoovervilles, right?
Hoovervilles, exactly. It's not at all what's real. It's what they perceive and how they can make people think that that's what's real. That there are all these destitute people on the street like they were back in the 30s during the Depression. Mm-hmm. We're in the best shape we've ever been as a country economically, in a lot of ways. We're not spiritually, that's for sure. We're not, I don't think we are as far as government is concerned. But we're always struggling with government. That's always a struggle, the left and the right. They've been struggling forever. Mm-hmm. The status versus, the free market, that's always gone on and it'll always go on. But this whole thing with presenting people of being destitute and downtrodden and living in tents with families and things like that, I think is purposeful on the left's part, and is why they won't clean it up. They want people to believe we're living in Hoovervilles in the 30s, and we're not.
By the way, that's Chuck Woolery. You're listening to Blunt Force Truth. Make sure you go to the website, bluntforcetruth.com, where you can get news 24/7. Great hats and bumper stickers and T-shirts and all kinds of things.
All that stuff.
All that great stuff. And if you haven't listened to the podcast, go to podcast1.com and find it. And also, you can watch Mark and Chuck every week live right here on Twitter and Facebook and all these places that I hate. You can see them live at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And then just keep following Chuck's Facebook or Twitter feed, and you can watch it. Have you seen, there's a documentary that's been floating around online kind of talking about the same thing called Seattle is Dying. Have you seen this?
No, I have not.
Buddy, you have got to go find this. It was done by Como TV. I used to work there. Not the most conservative TV station, that I promise you. But they go through what is going on in Seattle. And I saw the beginnings of this. I was working at a radio station called KVI, one of the first conservative talk stations in the country, one of the first ones to run Rush Limbaugh. Mm-hmm. And when I was doing my show there, they had just come up with this great idea. And this would have been, 10 years ago, maybe more. Here's the great idea, Chuck. We're going to have tent cities, and we're going to let homeless people live in these church parking lots. And what's going to be great about it is they're going to only be able to stay there for about 3 months. Then, police will be there and they'll make sure everybody's okay. And then after 3 months, they'll be able to move to another one. So they're not going to be, there all the time. And it's only going to be a few families. It's going to be great. And this is how we're going to solve the homeless problem. Mm-hmm. And they're
going to solve the homeless problem by concentrating the homeless in a church parking lot?
I guess. And then, of course, now we're not going to move them, and now more churches are going to have them, and now we're going to have them on freeway underpasses, and now they're just everywhere. Mm-hmm. And they're filled with drugs and rape and prostitution and crime, and the city and the people are going, hey, city of Seattle, help us. And in the Seattle is Dying, they've got a person, they're at a city council meeting, and they're going, people are breaking into my house every single day. I help us. And the mayor goes, well, call 911. And everybody is outraged because the police are telling them, nothing we can do. The city council won't let us do anything. And as a matter of fact, we let them out of jail as soon as they get there. It's out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
so it's a breakdown of law and order.
Absolutely.
And
you think it's on purpose?
I think it's on purpose. Yeah, I think it's on purpose as a fight against of how successful our country is. It makes us look like we're not successful at all. That we're just a total failure, which is really what pretty much the left tries to do with this country all the time. After the Second World War, the Marshall Plan kicked in, and it's very interesting. We started building great steel factories in Japan, mm-hmm. and very modern steel factories in Germany. They then took over our steel business because we were so far behind as far as the sophistication of our plants. They were way ahead of us. We dumped billions into the people we defeated. And by dumping billions into them, they became socialist, all of them. Even Britain became socialist right after the war. They wanted nothing to do with Churchill anymore, even though he warned against socialism. So all of these European countries, including Japan, basically became socialists. And I'm not sure that the Marshall Plan, which was kind of a welfare plan to put everybody back on their feet, wasn't a part of that. I think it was. Mm-hmm. And people got used to having the government pour things out to them, give things to them.
And you think that was on purpose, that when they came?
No.
We did it out of the goodness of our heart, right?
I think it was unintended consequences, but that's kind of what happened. And then now you get up to today, and it's the same thing on steroids. Now everybody's expecting government to do everything for them. Mm-hmm. They're not entrepreneurial at all. At spirit, my God, Britain and Germany and France, they are a total wreck. Sweden following them, Norway, Belgium. I mean, you name all of these countries. They've lost their culture by opening up to the Middle East and letting all these refugees come in. They've literally lost their culture. And they willingly did it, and they willingly are supporting the fact that they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And no one's saying a word, nothing, because if you do, they'll arrest you.
Right.
I mean, if you're a woman in Sweden and you go in and complain about somebody raping you, they say, don't talk about it. What? I mean, this is how far down the road they've gone. It's just insane what's going on in the world today. But, maybe it's winding down right on time. I always wonder about that. If the world has got its own, its own Bill Nye built into it, that it's on fire and nobody really knows it. I think that, by the way, was hysterical this week when Bill Nye went on that show from England, whatever that guy's name is, on HBO, and set a plastic globe on fire.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he said the world's on fire, nobody's paying attention. Of course, he used, epithets you wouldn't want to use on television because he was on cable.
Right.
But, Bill Nye set it on fire and said, the world's on fire, nobody's paying attention. Of course, it's not on fire. To the left, the world's always on fire.
Right.
Because they have to have a purpose, and their purpose is to always put out the fire that they light.
I'm still waiting for the killer
Bill Nye
bees.
Set the globe on fire. Right. It didn't just ignite on its own.
I'm still waiting for the killer bees to show up.
Well, you know what? I live in Texas, okay, now. And you're right. The killer bees were coming across from Mexico forever. And I always said I'll quit doing television when the killer bees finally cross into Texas. I'm through with it. Of course they never. Well, I guess they did to a certain extent, but
not real. I mean, heck, when I was a kid, that was the big scare. The killer bees are coming. Bees. They had a movie called The Swarm, I think was the name of it, and I was scared to death. But
if you mow the lawn, they'll come kill you.
Exactly,
because they're drawn to like engine noise or something.
The good news is, though, that lasted a couple years and we moved on. Now my kids, they've grown up their whole life with the world is coming to an end because of global warming, global cooling, climate change, and my kids are still petrified that we're all going to die because of things that Bill Nye, the science guy, came up with. By the way, Bill Nye was when I was in Seattle years ago in high school, Bill Nye was a comic, and he was on a TV show called Almost Live, and they came up with the name, my friend Ross Schaefer came up with the name Bill Nye the Science Guy because it was a bit. And now he's a science expert? Where the hell did that come from?
Well, it's just what culturally we will fall for. I mean, come on.
He's a comic.
A guy pours gasoline on a plastic globe, sets the world on fire, and says, the world is on fire and no one's paying attention.
Although remember Art Bell? Did you ever listen to him years ago?
He was on at midnight or something, wasn't he? Art Bell, wasn't he the alien guy?
He was the alien guy, and he used to have this thing, what's going on in the world now? I can't do it. His voice is way lower than mine. It's called The Quickening, and the world is quickening. It's quickly coming to an end. Yeah. And I used to laugh about that, but we never thought about Facebook, Apple, Twitter, all these things, the four horsemen of the apocalypse coming to us.
And by the way, this has always gone on, too. This has been around since the Catholic Church.
That the end of the world is coming.
It's coming. It's all happening right now. This is what it's been, the myth that's been going on. When the world comes to an end, everybody will know it. and it won't be a surprise. But it's this kind of mythology has always been around. It's always driven an ideology. It's always driven some spiritual things too, that the world is coming to an end. So you can't live your life and be, content with your life, because you got to constantly look over your shoulder, because the world is going to get you. It's coming to an end.
Right.
And it's not. I mean, Hollywood, our culture is literally built on the world coming to an end. Washington is being blown up. Aliens are invading, and I mean, how many stories do you hear now about aliens invading, and there are spaceships everywhere, and we don't know why they're there? I mean, it's just nuts.
Yeah.
People can't live their lives for the fear created by nothing.
Well, and you make there's
your imagination.
Well, you make a great point, because in political circles, the phrase "fear writes checks" is very, very powerful. Okay, we got to come up with something that's going to scare them. Then we're going to get the donations for our campaign.
Well, this is the monster that lives in your closet when you're a child, or lives under your bed when you're a child. It's not real. It's just made up to scare you. That's all. It's the ghost stories you tell around the campfire. I mean, come on. Grow up.
Unfortunately, those ghost stories are now having our government write checks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
all right.
true.
We got a lot of people making comments here on Twitter. Let's see here.
Like what?
Well, let me go here. Let's see here. Pure socialism is a failed 20th century tactic. I believe in a social capital hybrid, says one guy.
Yeah, that's what the Chinese believe in.
It's time to make everything made in America again. We need to take back who we are. Okay.
I don't disagree with that, but yet at the same time, I also see where capitalism can, you can involve the world. It's just that you don't have to bow down to the world. We're always apologizing for being so big and great. That's another thing that happened since the Second World War. We can't be that one power that everybody looks to. Well, why not? We are basically a good nation. We're not bad people, I don't think. We don't do bad things in the world. We've never colonized or been a colonial nation ever.
But do you think the other countries, do you think the Nazis thought they were bad people?
Do I think the Nazis thought they were bad people?
Right. When they were doing it, they probably thought extremist Muslims, they don't think they're bad people. They think they're good people trying to save the world. I mean, I don't agree with them.
I don't know. I can't imagine. I think it's all control and power. That's all it amounts to. So I think when someone's constantly seeking power over their fellow man to abuse them, which I think what Nazis did, and what the Muslim world is doing too. No, I don't think that's good. I don't think they think they're good. I think they just are purposeful. But
see, I've talked with terrorists. Okay, I've had guns put on my back.
If you go back to the Second World War and you look at how Nazis operated in the Middle East, they had all the Muslims, all of them.
They did.
And why? Because they had a lot of things in common. They even made them Aryans. Hitler actually declared certain Muslims in Bosnia and places like that were actually Aryan descent they were part of the SS. Did you know that? That
I didn't know.
They were literally part of the SS in I think it was Bosnia or someplace around there. They were mountain troops, and they were they wore fezzes, and they had the Nazi symbol on them. So fascism and Islam has always been very closely related. Always, it always has been. They have kind of the same goals. So, and they will forgive each other for who they are in order to attain power. And this is dangerous stuff that's going on today.
It's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous time, And it's funny, these same liberals who come up with movies that scare us are the same ones that support them. We got drones flying all over the place. Amazon wants to have drones come and deliver stuff. Am I the only one that saw Terminator 2? Or Terminator, where the drones are coming and shooting people? Am I the only one that read 1984, where they had a whole department called the Newspeak department, where they would change the meaning of stuff for the newspapers? Now it's online. Am I the only one that read that book? I don't think so. But we're just sitting around doing it now, and it's A-okay as long as it's against conservatives?
Well, conservatives have always been the target of the left and what other so-called neoconservatives. I find it hysterical. It's not funny, but it is kind of funny because in Washington, if you're a conservative, you're under the knife by both sides.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans hate you because you're a conservative, and the Democrats hate you because you're a conservative. So you really are an outlier. I mean, and then everybody in the Republican says, we're conservative, and they're not conservative at all. CNN has people on, Anna Navarro, people like that. They're not conservative. They weren't even close. You have people who are writing newspaper articles in the New York Times and Jennifer Rubin and people that, I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
So that's another thing you're up against all the time. We are so in the minority. And here Trump comes along, who's very conservative, far more than anybody ever thought that he would be.
Yeah.
And he's just getting killed for it. And the great thing about it is I don't know how in the world he gets up every day and smile on his face, goes into battle, has no problem with it, doesn't take it personally. And of course, the left always says he's in crisis when he really isn't, and fights back. And I honestly believe, I must tell you something. We will all know eventually, probably within the next 2 years. I think, Rusty, we will get to the bottom of how this whole Russia hoax started.
Get to the bottom. We already know. I know.
No. But you got to do it in a legal way. We know.
Okay.
We already know. Okay. But we got to do it legally.
All right.
So I think the investigations will come down. And I honestly believe that there are people who will be held responsible. I think James Comey.
Man, I hope you're right.
I think Clapper. I think all of these people will be held accountable. And I think that although Obama will not go to jail and Hillary will not go to jail, they are going to be exposed. And because I just don't
here's
think,
the problem with your theory.
I don't think the will of the people will outweigh the will of the law.
Yeah, here's the problem with your theory. First of all,
I could be wrong. But
I
that's
hope
what
you're right. I hope I'm looking at you now directly. I hope you're right, Chuck.
We all do.
Yes. Here's the problem. How do you get the message out when the entire media and social media is able to control what you can see and hear? Facebook is the largest, most powerful thing ever created, and they only have 100,000 employees. Guys, this is dangerous.
It's very interesting what you just said prior to what you just said, and that is you said, we know. We already know. Well, how did we find out?
Because I'm smart.
Well, not because you're smart.
I'm kidding. No, okay,
I mean,
all right, that's
smart.
fair.
You are smart, but we did find out. In other words, if there's a will to know, we'll find out. Now,
Okay,
what you're saying is casually.
but what happens though? I mean, that's fair, and you're right on that. But okay, one of the ways I used to do 6 hours of talk radio a day, every single day. You do one a week or 2 a week, 2 hours a week. That's a lot of work. 2 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
Can you think of 6 hours a day every day?
No, I couldn't talk that much.
So,
the funny thing about it is here I am on radio, which is a talking deal.
Yeah.
I don't really talk. I'm not a big talker. Now, Mark's a talker.
Yeah.
You're a talker. I'm really not a talker.
I think you sit at home every day watching Fox News yelling at the TV all day long.
No.
Am I close? Damn you! Donna Brazil, and then you save all that up, you take notes, and then you do 2 hours a week. Anyway, my point, though, was when I was doing 6 hours a week, one of the things I would do is I would scroll through the Facebook pages and look at all the news stories and get a good idea of what people were talking about. Today, I tried to do that. I know more about people's food, their daughter's wedding, a bunch of crap I have no interest in. News, gone. I barely found anything on Facebook.
Well, Twitter's the same way. I mean, if you look at what's trending on Twitter, it's very seldom anything that's important. In fact, I can look at the headlines on Drudge, and they're not headlines.
They're not?
It's not really news. I mean, I usually end up going to Breitbart or Gateway Pundit, places like that, or our news site, and we can find out what's really news. Most of the other stuff is just kind of gossipy. The thing with China is big because it's affecting our stock market. I get that, but it's not going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think China's going to bow down to us unless it's in their interests. But it's so easy for them to cover up everything because they're a communist nation. They can cover up everything. We're getting close. We're covering up everything here too. With a willing press.
You brought up Breitbart, and did you know Andrew at all?
I've known Andrew for a long, long time. Andrew I remember I saw him at CPAC that one time. I think it was CPAC, just before he died, unfortunately, and we hugged and saw each other. Hadn't seen each other for a long time. I met him at John Irwin's beach house in Malibu when he was a teenager, actually, and he hung out with John was my lawyer, and he hung out with his son. So I'd known Andrew for a long, long time. Not as obviously as what he'd become.
Right.
So anyway, we kind of said hello, and he was talking about some of the things that Mark and I were doing in videos on YouTube, and he looked at me. He said, "You get it. You really get it. It's funny what you're doing. It's entertaining, and you're getting your message across. So a few people get it, and you really get it." And we had a great time. Then we went into an interview together with someone. God only knows who. I don't pay attention to that stuff. And he kept claiming that I was actually his long lost father. So,
well, I bring him up because he was a close friend of mine too. As a matter of fact, the first talk show he ever filled in on was mine. And you'll get a kick out of this. We said, okay, you're 3, 2, 1, you're on the air. And he started hyperventilating. He was so scared. And they had to go to commercial. He had to collect himself in 5 minutes and go back on. Now, he got over that problem, obviously.
Oh, he sure did.
But it's sad and scary to me how few people remember him. And it hasn't been that long. And he was such a champion and such a great voice. And we just don't have those voices.
Well, he was
right
a conservative
now.
alcoholic. Anyone who has been an alcoholic or anyone who's been under the influence of alcohol and then they change and they're saved, they become a voice for, don't drink, don't do this. And that's what happens. He was a liberal all of his life and all of a sudden became a conservative, and he said, don't be a liberal anymore. And he was crazy and just nailing it. And that's what happens. This enthusiasm rises up with people who finally see the light. And that's where Andrew was. He saw the light. He was very vocal about it and very effective too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And plus, he was likable.
He was a great guy. I love that
Gone
guy.
too soon.
Let's see. Let's take a look at some of these comments. I'm way behind here. The reason why homelessness doesn't get a fix is because there's no money in it.
Maybe.
Let's see here. Chuck is the best. Chuck, preach it. Hashtag MAGA. Hashtag Patriots. I live near Amazon and Microsoft. I agree. Time to break them up, someone says. World is coming to an end due to terrorism, liberals, and Democrats. Again, I don't know if it's coming to an end yet.
I don't, we'll know.
Yeah.
It'll happen in a snap.
Let's see here. We are kind-hearted by nature. It's special interest groups that are driving the great divide in America.
That's absolutely true.
Technology has made Americans lazy, which makes them want to vote for people who don't make them earn.
Do you know how Lincoln won his election?
Bribing people?
Abraham Lincoln?
No. How did he do it?
Well, he won it through the Electoral College.
Right?
He lost a popular vote.
Is that right?
Miserably. He was like 38%.
I did not know that.
So what if he hadn't become president and we did what the left wants us to do, is get rid of the Electoral College? So what if Lincoln hadn't become president? How long would it have been before we finally got rid of slavery?
It might still be here.
Maybe.
I mean, one of the things that and it was Democrats, they were tired of the Civil War. They were called Copperhead Democrats at the time, and it sounded like what was going on. Oh, we're tired of the war. The South have earned it. Let's just break the country up and let the South have their victory. That was a big movement for a while.
Yeah, it's not as if we haven't been here before, and that was obviously far more destructive than where we are today. And that wasn't left-right. You know, it's funny. We always look. In fact, I'm going to finish with this thought. I want people to think about this.
Okay.
The left today, as we see it, the progressive left, and probably for 100 years, although we haven't recognized it, I think we recognize it much easier today because it's exposed itself. But the left isn't just another political wing. The left is the enemy of America. It's the enemy of the concept of America. The left is the enemy of the Constitution of America. They are anti-constitutionalists, anti-Bill of Rights, anti-Declaration of Independence. They are anti-American. And I believe that in my heart. And that's the problem, is I don't think we recognize the left as being that. And that, in fact, is what they are. Now, they say that they're many things, but at their core, that's what they are. And it's what they've always been from Woodrow Wilson right on up to today. So if you recognize that that is the enemy of America and they want to transform us to be something that we're not and never intended to be, and that would be more like Europe. They are always saying we should be more like France, more like England, more like Europe itself. Europe is always better than we are. Then you need to get a hold of what you think and what you believe and how you vote and how you view the opposition. It is not just the opposition, it is the enemy. I guarantee you they wake up every morning and they see us as the enemy, and we don't. And we need to change the way we look at our culture, the way we look at our politics, the way we look at our enemies, and recognize them for what they are. It's like Chinese, the China, we don't really recognize, we look at them as customers, not as enemies. They're not customers, folks. They're our enemy. They're our arch enemy. They're a bad enemy. And we need to treat them as such. Not that we can't get along with them. We get along with some of our enemies sometimes. We may get along with Democrats that are our enemies, but they're still our enemies. And I guarantee you that we are their enemies to them. So I'm just saying we need to get a little more serious about this and understand what they are, what drives them, where they want to take us as a nation and as a people. And it's not a good place. It's a bad place.
And what do you think we should do? I mean, that's a hell of a message.
It's how we vote. It's how we turn out for votes and how much we believe in the democracy of the republic, the Constitution. Those things are important. And our legacy is I mean, it's what we leave behind us. And that's how we vote and who we vote for and how we hold people accountable for what they do. I mean, we have to hold our president accountable, our senators, our congressmen, and we have to overwhelm these people on voting day. We just have to overwhelm them. And it's always like Democrats should never be in a position of power again, ever in this country. And then
that's a hell of a statement.
And then it would give us a chance to clean up the Republican Party because it's, got some bad actors as well. But nothing like the Democrat Party. They really want to take us down a bad road. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. Anyway, that's where I want to leave you today, folks.
Well, USMC Patriot says, well said, Chuck, and has a American flag emoji next to it.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Well, we want to remind everybody, get your Chuck Woolery and Blunt Force Truth stuff at bluntforcetruth.com. Also, listen to the podcast everywhere, Podcast One. And Chuck and Mark will be back next week. And Chuck and Mark are here live on Twitter and Facebook, 11 a.m. Eastern Time every Tuesday.
And I apologize, everyone, for not hitting on all 8 cylinders today.
Buddy, you're great today. Shh, don't say that.
Yeah, okay. Right. Sometimes you say when I was doing Love Connection, I didn't feel good. I did the best shows when I felt horrible because you overcompensate for feeling bad. But anyway.
You did great.
Thanks for listening and watching today. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time on Blunt Force Truth. Thank you, Rusty.
Thank you. We'll see you then.